know it's the end of the day, but these were wonderful 4 lectures. So, although I have a couple of questions myself, but first I would like to ask the audience to ask questions or post comments to the panelists.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all your presentations. They were very engaging. One remark to what Christian said at the end. You mentioned those events that were connected with graphic arts, and also the next paper was about graphic art events, and I was thinking about how integrative all those events were. People coming from different backgrounds, representing different artistic tendencies, used to meet in Ljubljana and also during the Krakow Biennale of graphic arts, and conceptual, and also, for example, in 75, 76, 7 in Krakow, video art was present. You know, at those very official, to use these words, international meetings. So this was yet another hub of transfers between all those different, normally put in opposition and confronting each other milieus. So this is very valuable, let's say, how to call it, remark that you made. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, but it pops up in various researches actually lately, and I think it's something to be explored in more detail. And it just struck my attention that many artists resorted to graphic as a kind of medium that is, as you were saying, inclusive enough to allow for different types of experiments or integrate different stylistic or other aesthetic interests in it, and also as an expanded medium. And because the print itself becomes, I think, very important. There's something else to state about in the form of artist publications or also booklets. And I think in some cases they're just not an extension of the exhibition, but sometimes the space where you can create a project. So it's also about creating spaces, and it travels. It is a medium that allows, like photography, for something to travel and to travel easily, so to speak, in financial terms, because it's also important economically. How could these exhibitions be assembled? Of course, some, and I also have my own questions, but after the panel about the museums took in Łódź, how these exhibitions actually were financed and traveling. But in other cases, it was easier to transport the artwork, so you can choose the graphic, it's easier to transport them. And for mail art, it's obvious that you can do it self-financed. So I think this turn towards graphic has, and the printed medium has to do something with this capacities of circulation and with the ability to establish contacts that was everywhere in one way or another popping up in this panel.
If I just can shortly follow up, there was already in the 70s what could be called like the graphic arts in the expanded field, and we could use also like categories like press-based art or matrix-based art, things like that, and they could be used, like, you know, from traditionalist to experimental art. And as you pointed out, also it kind of facilitated all those circulations and exchanges and mail-based art. Yeah, thanks.
Not to monopolize the discussion, but just one more comment. It relates to textile as well, as a medium. That was.
Can I add a comment? I just wanted to add to what you said about graphic arts. I think it was the fact that Xeroxes were unavailable in Poland and in other countries in the late 70s and in the 80s, was that Eastern European art sort of became fetishized a bit because it was unique, it all was hand pressed, you know, it wasn't the potato stamps or whatever they used. whereas in the 80s, it was all of a sudden all the male art from the West. It was like huge amounts of Xerox copies, and then there was the moment of this overproduction and oversaturation. So that's, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, just a brief comment that it was really intriguing, the humanist realism question, because it appeared also in Hungarian press, but as an accusation of conceptual art that it's not humanist enough or not humanist at all. And it was a really interesting discussion if there's any art that is not humanist. So it appears, and it would be very interesting to know what's the source, how like socialist realism is replaced by socialist humanism, because I think it was not only in Romania. And it connects to my question to Zuzana, that I'm not so familiar with Juraj Meliš and Jozef Jankovic's work, but I'm just wondering because they had some humanist works like posters which were kind of for peace and such social issues, that did they have a different position within the Czechoslovak scene as like others like Julius Koller or Peter Bartosz? So were they like different positions within this kind of non-official sphere?
Est-ce que je peux parler français? Quelqu'un comprend? Mais peut-être ma traductrice ne comprend pas, excusez-moi. Un moment. Tak ja vám to poviem, my ste to preložili. Okay. Nie, lebo nerozumiem. Je pense que presque personne ne parle pas français. Bon, musíte voilà, les Roumains, c'est sûr, les Roumains, je ne doute pas.
I will translate.
Comprend, oui, ça je le sais. Treba povedať, že všetci títo umelci, o ktorých som hovorila, vlastne boli vylúčení zo Zväzu slovenských výtvarných umelcov, oni stratili status vlastne či v rámci tej...
We are just consulting the translation. One moment.
Že či bolo v rámci tej undergroundovej scény, že či boli rozlíšení, či boli medzi nimi nejaké rozdiely. Ako, či tvorili skupiny ešte v rámci toho. Áno, rozumiem. Tak povedzte len toľko, že tá neoficiálna scéna fakticky sa časom stretávala na všetkých možných podujatiach mimo toho striktného rozdeľovania na tendencie.
There was like this underground scene of the artists usually stick together. There were like smaller groups, but they usually, there were no such distinctions to be named, or how to say it. So the comparison between these artists wasn't made on the basis of this kind of like what kind of art they're making. Well, Jankovic was the most important in the 60s, so he was like specific in this generation. He was accepted between this scene in the 70s.
If I may, I want to just follow up on that question of social humanism. It's actually quite interesting because it appeared in Czechoslovak context in 1970s, and it was actually used by official interpreters of social realism as a term which replaced the original social realism term. And it's quite interesting because it is really connected to the change during the normalization, because the social realism wasn't really realism anymore. I don't want to get into the details of it. So this was a way how to justify it. And I wonder if it came from Ceausescu, or if it came from Romania, or if where was the idea from?
I'm positively sure that it didn't come from Ceausescu.
No.
I doubt
Yeah.
that any ideas came from Ceausescu.
No,
But
I
not
mean,
the
book
question
and-
is for sure it wasn't a national
Yeah.
thing. This was just connected to the broader socialist discourse, and
Yeah.
as I hinted upon it, it's the way some socialists they started to interpret this so-called relaxation. And the turn towards aesthetics in one of Khrushchev's discourses in which he says, okay, we have ethics, but we need also to re-aestheticize our socialist realism that have become ugly, was a sort of a breakthrough moment because, of course, it was a tectonic moment. We need to allow for a bit of different expression, and the term was an attempt to coin something that comes, as you were saying, after socialist realism that is too ideological and perhaps too idealized, and to become more human means to show the preoccupations of socialist life, that is the progress and the advancement of society in economy and so on. But in the Romanian case, the particularity is that it stayed for a while as this sort of tolerant blanket term, as I was trying to suggest for a while here. But after 1974, when Ceausescu actually publishes this, it's just a pretext to instrumentalize further figurative representation towards a nationalist type of communism based on glorification of history and the glorification of great historical figures from the past, and which culminates in the 80s with this own encomiastic series of portraitures in which it's basically re-establishing the Stalinist type of the culture of the leader with this idealized version where Ceausescu basically is the apex of the socialist development for Romania, and there's a sort of a thread going from Burebista to Ceausescu in which Romania developed towards socialism. Socialism was actually the goal, and it is attained now and then with him. And it's humanistic enough because it gives everybody the opportunity to participate in this progress. So that was the idea. It's
Yeah, I understand that. So the book was actually 1974. I didn't catch it during the...
in 71 first, and then 74 it's a book published about it.
Okay.
So
Because
the 74 book was, I chose it because it's the most elaborate formula. It's in a book.
So, but it is interesting because it is synchronized with the appearance of the term in the Czechoslovak official press. It's very interesting. But I don't know.
I have to dwell more into it, but
yeah.
I think Alina has a comment or an answer.
One more comment to this. Just the comment to this that it can be said that the Czechoslovakia was the losers of this period because all the surrounding countries had a more liberal, the art was more free and more connected with the rest of the world. It's our feeling after that we were really the occupied country of that period.
So I had just a small comment continuing this discussion that was Pavlina and Tomek raising. So in our research done together here with few of scholars in connection to Henry Moore in the Eastern Bloc. So I was following the art criticism discourse in relation to sculpture, which is very interesting in terms of these changing regimes. And actually the terms humanism is just replacing the socialist realism. So in reality, they are transmitting the same values and the same. So there is not actually a change in the definition of it. It's just a switch of terms. So this is from my point of view. So.
If I could add, the very term is earlier. In Poland, for example, social or socialist humanism was used like in the late 40s, when it was used to counter and to criticize personalist humanism. The influence of Jean-Paul Sartre and things like that. And we should also remember that humanism was an empty signifier just after the war. Everyone and everything wanted to be humanist, and the question was to oppose one humanism to another. There was American humanism, and they had to be like French humanism and also socialist humanism. So the term is earlier. Then we've got socialist realism, and maybe, you know, what you are talking about is the application of the term to the artistic context, but the term is earlier. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a question for Natalia about Richard Stanislavski. Can you tell us some more about his role as curator of Europa exhibition? Because we already talked also with colleagues. I have found in Thomas Strauss correspondence that actually he was consultant before this exhibition took place, and somehow that there was the hope he would co-curate this exhibition, and now we talked the same with Laszlo Beke. So do you know maybe something of this background, how it was decided, by whom he was nominated for the curator of this Europa exhibition, because it was a very important exhibition. And my question would be, do you know something more about the process, how he has got the main curator of this show?
I'm so sorry to disappoint you, but no. I'm at the very beginning of my research. It's my first year of my PhD, and I see that I have a lot to do during the next years. So, but I'm really going to try focus on this exhibition, maybe during the Prague conference and the Prague edition, because this is a really specific case. It should be really focused on, and yeah. So I'm sorry.
Yes,
not today, but I hope.
Thank you, and maybe we can also make some cooperation in the future on this project. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, I would like to ask Margorzata about this Anna Kuntera's act. It was very, very intriguing for me. That could it be? And you said that she was sitting with artists without words and interpreted as a network and friendship, so on forth. So my question is that could that be a kind of subtle, playful critique of this very misogynistic, male-dominated art world? Because could be? Okay, because for me it seems that to be voiceless is a kind of pulling them down into that status, which was normalized or normal for the women. So kind of experiencing being voiceless and mute. So for me it is more like a critique than a demonstration of friendship.
I completely agree. Her previous works were, I think, one of the best examples of this kind of playful tomboy feminism in Poland, because she's a few years younger than, for example, Natalia Ella and Eva Partum. And one of my favorite pieces of her it's called, oh my God, I'm blanking. I'm so sorry, I completely blanked on the title, but basically she's sweeping, okay, it will come back to me. But she did several works even when she was 18. In Nova Ruda, she had this one work where it was just a portrait of her, and it's like, "Look me in the eyes" was captioned below it, and then you could take a miniature of the photograph. So definitely here, she is already a student. She's also her husband's student, and all these other guys, you know, are there, and they're, you know, playing that they're doing all the work, whereas they're living in her parents' apartment. And you know, she played a lot in her practice on that, but it wasn't the sort of. That's why I mentioned she laughed about it, because she had this very peculiar sense of humor, and she still does. And that's why I think this action was also very much about power relations, but done in a very playful way. She just sat there, now you come and you look me in the eyes and now you blush because, you know, it's my situation, I structured it. And I think the outcome being that Jean Salem invited her and not any other of the guys that, that were there is quite a good reflection of how pointed and important this work was.
And it was also very refreshing because it was not a heavy-handed critic like in the first, second generation of American, Western European feminists. So I truly liked it.
Discussing this, I think it's important to add that Anna Kutera was also invited to Toronto for a contextual art symposium where she was especially asked about what the situation of women in Poland. And there are interesting analysis of this meeting in which she couldn't really express her ideas because of the language problem. And they had one person to translate for them, but American feminists had a higher command of expressing their views, and it was difficult. But she was to defend, please correct me, but she was defending and saying, and also in recollection that women had a better position in Poland than in the US.
Yeah, there's this. I don't want to get into this whole feminist debate in the 70s in Poland, but definitely the confrontation with the American feminists, especially the second wave of feminism, who argued that women should work, made no sense in the East because all the women worked anyway. They just had double work, you know. So this whole argument of women, they were like, we're already working, we're already taking care of the houses, you know. That's like, maybe let's chill. But this is one thing, but there's also an incredible quote. I don't remember it was if Anna Kutera told me that directly or it was Anna Markowska, Professor Anna Markowska, who told me that Anna Kutera said that. Sorry, it's blurred in my memory. But I think it was Anna Markowska who said that. When she asked, like, were you feminists? Like, were you fight? And then Anya, I think, looked at her and said, no. I mean, what are we supposed to fight with them about? They had nothing. What, the little Fiat car they had? Like, there was a completely different understanding of the gender balance in terms of ownership and financial structures. But it was, of course, very much a macho culture that these artists negotiated in different ways within the networks. Eva Partum is very much about presence, nudity, femininity, sexuality, all of these things. So for Anna Kutera, it's more of a, you know, wink in the eye. Yes, thank you. Oh my God, yes, malarstwo feministyczne. Sorry, complete blank. So basically, so basically, she did it in when she was a student at Alfons Mazurkiewicz's.
Feminist painting. I'm just repeating.
Exactly, and so she had like this. There was a scroll of cloth on the floor, and she was brushing paint.
Yes.
And so basically, and she called it feminist painting. Thank you, Alina.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question for Natalia, because I was wondering about this touring exhibition, because I'm more familiar with sort of Western touring exhibitions all over the Eastern Bloc. So was it habitual for the Muzeum Sztuki Łódź to send out touring exhibitions in the Eastern Bloc, or is that a unique example?
This example, which is actually pretty rare, and there was no other touring exhibition in that scale. So I find it really interesting and completely out of profile of the museum collection. But I'm assume that it could be, as I said, this in the first exhibition, this personal choice of Stanisławski, because as Olga Stanisławska, daughter of Stanisławski, told me that his personal choice and this feeling of aesthetic was rather different than art which he was showing in the museum. So it was completely, this case, it's completely out of my mind and out of actually the institutional history and the program policy of Stanisławski. it was pretty strange. So I think I thought that it would be an interesting case to show how strange during the years the program policy was. It was changing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just a comment that from the Czechoslovak point of view, from the places it was exhibited, it can be considered an official exhibition more than underground or any other sort of, like, this is the mainstream.
Yeah. Official, absolutely official.
Pretože musel byť mimetista, mimezista muselo byť figurálne. Museli byť tie výstavy figurálne, preto mohli byť.
Because they had to be figural?
Yeah, it was really safe choice, that's for sure. I mean, there was any constructivism or something, or any abstraction, so it was pretty safe choice, which was actually at these examples which I put into presentation, I think pretty visible.
Sorry, but just the fact that it was a safe choice, it doesn't explain the scale of the whole thing. Like, it was huge.
But also
project.
Kulišević was a favor of the ministry, and you know he was like from the very beginning. He had a huge monographic exhibition once in a decade. So it was I think for ministry it was pretty obvious to Kulišević is a great choice.
The most saying thing is that the itinerary ends in Moscow. Like, that says it all.
Yeah, and I think...
I would just have one question related to this as well. But was it financed by the museum or by the...
The first one was financed by museum, and it was this collaboration between National Gallery and Prague, but then it was financed by ministry. Finland,
so
Romania, and...
later was went through the Office of Exhibitions.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a couple of comments. Continuing with the Kulišević Turing exhibition. So for me, it's more like a kind of, cultural diplomacy in a way. And this is why it's a bit surprising to me that you mentioned Mieczysław Poremski in this context, because I did some research on his aesthetic theory, and it was very much informed by systems theory, cybernetics, hypercubes, topology, all those things. And so it's really interesting how he was put on this project with this specific background that he could not obviously activate, or could he? I don't know. So that would be my question about Mieczysław Poremski. And also, I have a question for Małgorzata. I was wondering if you could expand more on the role of Niels Lomholt. You quoted this kind of slightly orientalizing his perception, and with this vision of the urinals, and so what was his role in that? I know that he was also an important figure in promoting male art, but I would like to learn more about his involvement, and also on the institutional level. How did it play out?
As far as I found out, the Kuteras were in touch with him through mail, through post, for quite some time. So he was present in the network for a few years. But again, he didn't start the Formular Press yet, so it was more like an individual artist. He didn't take it on as a huge mail out project as he did in the later years. And I think they thought that he was interesting, and they just invited him to come to Gdańsk. So it was very direct, oh, we got, yeah, cool. Niels, do you want to come? Yeah, I want to come. Sort of, yeah. I didn't ask why they selected him. I did once ask Anya, but I think she said, yeah, he was a nice guy, cool art. We invited him, so I never got any more insight from her why him exactly.
Thank you.
When it comes to Poremski, I think we probably can assume that this Kulišević was there actually, but because also Stanisławski weak point. I mean, it was completely unrepresentative in any of his rights which you bring it. But it was also interesting for me when I done some research on this contacts of Stanisławski in Latin and South America with Brazil, with Chile, Cuba, Mexico. And always when the name Kuliszewicz had appeared, it was also Poremski who wrote the text, this problematic text, you know, which was this detailed description of his work and during the years. So I think it had begun in Sao Paulo, during Biennale Sao Paulo, when Stanisławski was firstly assistant of Poremski, who was a curator of the Polish exhibition. It was like 60, and then, or 59, I assume. And then the younger colleague just bring it in, and Stanisławski was a curator of the Polish exhibition for many years until he became a director of Muzeum Sztuki. So it was really strong duo, which had some really unspecific taste and some, strange, yeah.
Thanks so much. It's really interesting because, I was researching a lot about Mieczysław Poremski. Amazing insights into aesthetics, and he was, for example, using the metamorphoses of this hypercube to show the transformation within different art genres. It was very mathematical language. It was almost like a conceptual art in itself, in the style of like this Atkinson and Art and Language. And strangely enough, when Stefan Morawski is writing this text that, okay, Polish conceptualism is like not really analytical enough, that it's lacking something, like he did not consider Poremski's art theoretical texts as, examples of conceptualism, actually, which is really interesting,
I think I can shed some more light on this relationship. It started earlier. I think there is a text on Kuliszewicz by Poremski from the 50s, and the systematic, this scientific interest that you, Radek, mentioned, they kind of appeared as a way of natural evolution of Poremski in the early 60s. And this information theory, things like that, this is all 60s. And Kuliszewicz, this is also important. Natalia told us that his drawings were not that politically explicit, yet the context, especially in the 50s, for his work was explicitly political. He was sent to different parts of the world, to these global socialist regions, to document the life of socialist cultures all over the world. So he was the very official, formal, but not propaganda, not explicit political artist. And that's why this was, first of all, the safe choice, but also a kind of tradition to have Kuliszewicz being sent to different places as to represent the socialist state country which Poland was. Okay.
Yeah, this exhibition in the 50s, it was in the National Bureau of Exhibition, Warsaw in Zachęta. It was a huge monographic exhibition in which the core was this cycle, Ruins of Warsaw, right? So I think it's a good example what Tomek already told, yeah. And also in the catalog is, of course, a text by Mieczysław Poremski. Yeah.
Any further questions? If not, I would like to thank all the presenters for their wonderful lectures and the audience for the lively discussion. And I'll hand it over to Zsuzsa or Ramesha.
So we are really overjoyed that it all could happen, and you were all here. And I think it was really important for the project that we started together with Andrea, Pavlina, Hanna, and Magdalena. But I think the idea is to make this group bigger, and so it was really good to be in such a friendly and inspiring companion for these 2 days. And I hope you also got inspired and enjoyed yourself. And we will definitely continue discussions. I think there's a lot of new ideas and points of connection that were raised. So in addition to thanking you, I would also insist on keeping in touch. And maybe Emese can add.
Yeah, so I think you have said already all the important points. So thank you for your coming. Thank you for sharing ideas. And I think we're all really happy about this personal possibility and this family feeling we could experience together. So we are always very happy to have you here in Artpool in Kempki and to continue this exchange together. Thank you very much for all of you.
So we will continue in Prague in November. There's an open call. And as David already told, that this third event of the Resonances project will be about exhibition history and its relevance for regional art histories. And our aim is that with all these 4 conferences, the last one, the 4th one, is planned for Poznan next year in March. We would like to create a kind of polyphonic narrative, a collective one, in which we can join local knowledges and archival material and aspects and interpretations. So there are open points when you can enter this. If you are interested still through, first of all, this open call for the Prague event, but also later in connection with the last conference planned for Poznan, which will focus on trans-regional contexts as well. So please follow our activities on the website and also feel free to contact us at any case. So thanks a lot, and also enjoy yourself. Maybe we can stay for half an hour or more around the building and engage in informal conversations. So we'll be here for a while. And thank you, everyone. And I would also like to thank a lot for all our colleagues who helped a lot, especially Zsófia Kókai. And Dóra Halasi, who was indispensable because a lot of people were following our discussions online, so much more than those who are here. So we hope that the local scene and the international scene could also follow some of these discussions. So thanks a lot for everyone, for the museum's team as well, and everyone who made it possible. Thank you.